All right, my clock says 10 o'clock, so welcome everyone, members of the public listening online, those that are here in the chamber with us this morning. It is the 23rd day of June, 2020. This is our Weber County Commission meeting. My name is Gage Froer. I'll be chairing today. To my left is Commissioner Scott Jenkins. To my right, Commissioner Jim Harvey. Again, we welcome you to our meeting. We're going to start off with a Pledge of Allegiance by Scott Perks, an invocation by Rick Grover. Rick's with us this morning. And I'll give the thought of the day, then we'll go to public comments. So let's go to that point. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we're grateful for the opportunity we have to meet as a county this morning. We're thankful for the freedoms that we possess. We're grateful for the opportunity to live in this country, and we are grateful for the opportunity we have to exercise the opportunity we have to vote and to preserve our freedoms. We're grateful for our Constitution and for the great document that are found in this inspired work of government action in our lives. We pray that as decisions are made at this time, that our commissioners might be guided and directed by Thee. We're thankful for all that Thou hast blessed us with, and we pray those who may be struggling with health challenges or other physical or temporal needs, that they might be strengthened during these difficult times. And we say these things in the name of Thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Rick. So, commissioners, my thought of the day, we just celebrated Father's Day this past weekend, and I thought it only appropriate, since when we celebrated Mother's Day, that I forget who it was, but we talked about how important mothers were in our lives. So I think it's equally important we talk about Father's Day and the impact that those individuals had on each of our lives and the directions that set us in our course. And a couple of quotes that I've always liked. One was by Harmon Killebrew. You probably have heard of this in some form or the other, but my father used to play with my brother and me in the yard. Mother would come out and say, "You're tearing up the grass." He would say, "We're not raising grass, we're raising boys," which I think is very true. That brings back some memories to my childhood. We talk about Grandpa Froer and from Commissioner Harvey's words this morning, and many times that I was working on the farm with him, and I think it was my grandma would come out and make some remark about us getting dirty or vice versa, or what are you doing with those cows? And he'd make a similar comment. We're not really in this business to make money raising cows. We're in this business to raise our kids and grandkids to be better people. And so I've taken that to heart with my boys, that, look, it's not necessarily the what we may call hobby farms or what we do outside our work. It's what we do with our children that makes a difference in their lives, that sets that direction. One of the other quotes that I like by Charles Keating is, "Every father should remember one day his son will follow his example, not his advice." I think that's true with both sons and daughters, that we lead by example. I think we see that every day, not necessarily by the words we speak. People look at our actions, not necessarily all the time our words. I think that's very important as leaders, that we remember that. So that's my thoughts today, commissioners. Thank you very much. So with that, let's go to public comments. We see any people in the audience? Are we on Zoom, Stacy? Any comments coming through there? Please, if you have comments, please come up. Welcome. And if you'd please give your name and address, we'd like to have that for the record, if you wouldn't mind.
My name is Shay Bitten, and I have property at 2121 South, 4075 West in Taylor.
My name's Karen Kendall. I live at 3974 West, 2100 South in Taylor.
And I'm Jean Hellier, and I live at 3961 West, 2200 South in Taylor.
Right, welcome. Thank you. Go ahead.
I'm going to be speaking regarding item number 1. And I just wanted to let you guys know that I represent the neighbors within the adjacent area of the proposed Taylor Landing Cluster Subdivision. I would like to start off with a few things that we've talked about. The first line of purpose statement of the Weber County Land Use Code, Section 101-1-2 states, "This title is designed and enacted for the purpose of promoting the health, safety, morals, convenience, order, prosperity, and welfare of the present and future inhabitants of Weber County, State of Utah." And again, under the subdivision purpose and intent, Section 106-1-1, it states, "The purpose and intent of this title is to promote the health, safety, convenience, and general welfare of the inhabitants of the unincorporated planning areas of the Weber County in subdivision and land and related matters." So we have the following objections to the proposed Taylor Land Cluster Subdivision. Objection to finding number 2. In the staff report dated June 16, 2020, it states, "With the recommended conditions, the proposed subdivision complies with applicable ordinances." Section 106-2-3 is blocks, and it says, "A maximum length of blocks generally shall be 1,300 feet, and the minimum length of blocks shall be 500 feet. Blocks over 800 feet in length may, at the discretion of the Planning Commission, be provided with a dedicated walkway through the block at approximately the center of the block. Such walkways shall not be less than 6 feet in width." The Taylor Landing Cluster Subdivision does not meet this section of the subdivision code. The smallest blocks in the development range from 238 feet to 486 feet, which falls short of the required minimum block length of 500 feet per section 106-2-3 of the subdivision standard. This is in direct violation of the land use code, and the subdivision should be required to be redesigned to meet this standard. Objection to finding 2-2. In the staff report dated June 16, 2020, it states, "As evidenced by the soils analysis, the proposed open space is capable of having the highest nutrient content and best irrigation capabilities over the soil types on the property." Page 12 of the West Central Weber General Plan states, "Environmental quality and quality of life of residents are very much aware that growth may have environmental and social consequences. As the community grows, residents wish to maintain and enhance the quality of life in the West Central Weber County by protecting water, air, and land from environmental degradation. The general plan should promote policy and action that supports safety and health of both environment and neighborhood." Section 108-18-1, Purpose and Intent regarding drinking water source protection states, "The purpose of this chapter is to ensure the provision of a safe and sanitary drinking water supply to the residents of the county who receive water for culinary and domestic use from public water systems in the county by the establishment of drinking water source protection zones surrounding the wellheads and springs for all wells and springs used by public water systems in the county, and by designation and regulation of property uses and conditions that may be maintained within such zones." Section 108-18-2 defines hazardous waste as a waste with properties that make it dangerous or potential harmful to human health or to the environment. The applicant did in fact have a soil analysis done on the property, and the resulting analysis by Martin and Nicholson Environmental Consultants provided the applicant with a series of mitigating elements that will be necessary to make this property prime agricultural open space, as defined by the Weber County Land Use. The study calls for applying sulfur and gypsum to reduce effects of the high sodium levels in the soil and to monitor the nitrate levels, and then deep irrigation to saturate these chemicals. The boron in the soil will require deep irrigation to reduce the harmful effects of the high sodium levels. Per the study, the crops will continually need to be tested for nitrates due to the high levels in the soil. Nitrates are extremely hazardous to children and the elderly, along with persons with health issues. We are requesting that the Commission uphold the denial of the request for the Taylor Landing Cluster Subdivision based on these harmful impacts. This land is not prime agricultural open space without applying hazardous waste to the soil to make it so. And this property is adjacent to a drinking water source protection area as well as being surrounded by the individual wells that service homes in the area. And I have a map of those wells that is public that I have attached if you guys want it. With the results of the soil analysis, these toxic elements will be pushed into the water aquifers and contaminate the surrounding the runoff, the soil, and the adjacent wells. It is the responsibility of the government to ensure that the development of per the Subdivision Code Section 106-1-1 will not create a harmful impact on the residents within or in the surrounding areas. This is also further stated as the Weber County Land Use Code purpose and intent found in Section 101-1-2 in the West Central Weber County General Plan, which has a vision statement that reads, maintain a community that is safe from environmental hazard. And the last objection is finding number 1 in the staff report dated June 16, 2020 that states, the proposed subdivision conforms to the West Central Weber General Plan. In the 2003 West Weber General Plan that was updated November 19, 2019, it says on pages 7 and 8, when people say don't change a thing, we like it the way it is, they're generally referring to the open spaces resulting from the dominance of agricultural uses in West Central Weber County. Agriculture has been the primary use since the area was settled, and most people expressed a view that agriculture should continue to be the highest priority for the area. Participants cited an informal survey of selected residents that yielded similar feelings. Between 96 and 98% of responses express a desire to maintain rural character and agricultural land. Rural atmosphere is the quality most often expressed as desirable. When speaking about rural quality or atmosphere, people expressed a desire to preserve the openness of the area, the right to have animals on the property, and the agricultural uses and businesses in that area. With that being said, with this vision in mind, and based on the beginning purpose and intent of the Land Use Code, which states this title is designed and enacted for the purpose of promoting the health, safety, morals, convenience, order, prosperity, and welfare of the present and future inhabitants of Weber County, State of Utah. We, the affected neighbors of this development, request that you please uphold the Planning Commission's denial of the request for the preliminary approval of the Taylor Landing Cluster Subdivision based on our objections to these findings, backed up by the Land Use Code and the West Central Weber General Plan, and by observing the first purpose and intent of your role as a decision maker to promote and protect the health, safety, and welfare of the present and future inhabitants of Weber County.
Okay, thank you for those remarks. Appreciate you. And the reason, hold on a second, we may have a question. So you did go over the 3 minutes, but since you had 3 people up there, I gave you 9 minutes, so which you used.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Hey,
Ed,
I
Commissioner
do
Jennings.
have a question for you. I really appreciate you coming today. You see this a little different than I see it, and I'd kind of like to drill down on this just a little. The way I look at this denial had to do with the quality of the land and allowing the subdivision or development to take place on one part of the land versus another part of the land. Do you see it different than that?
Well, I just see that you should be able to, they need to redesign the drawing so that the agricultural space is put on the prime land so that they don't have to put any sort of chemicals into the land because that could create harmful effects on our aquifers. That's one thing that we...
So, Rick, do we have, she mentioned the well locations and the zoning around that. Do we have a drawing of that? Because that's never been presented to us. Okay.
I have it. Do you want to look at it now?
Well,
We'll have Rick do that when
yeah,
he comes
we'll have
up.
Rick do that when he
Okay.
comes. Thank you. I appreciate this very
Yeah,
much.
thank you.
Thank you very much for being with us. Anybody else? Keep in mind, if you're by yourself, we're going to give you 3 minutes. Thank you. Please introduce yourself.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Mariah Hakopi, and I'm a resident of Ogden City. I'm not going to give my address. It's public information. So,
Yep.
I've come today to let you guys know I feel like my rights are being violated as a citizen of the U.S. by the county library. and by the county. The library is a public place, publicly funded. Therefore, I should be able to enter that library without being discriminated and having medical questions asked of me in public. They're not medical professionals, and therefore they have no right to ask me those questions. I understand that we are in a challenging situation, and this year has been very challenging. And I know that it's been hard on you guys as well as everybody else trying to make proper decisions for the safety of our community. However, we in our county have gone to green. And these mostly are recommendations as far as the coronavirus guidelines from the governor. And I realize that some of this, people are still scared about and some are not. But those decisions need to be made by individuals. And so my Fourth Amendment rights are being violated to go to the library, which is not okay. And then the schools are still not open. And from what I understand by talking to professionals at the schools who run the schools, that if I want to enroll my child, I now have to let somebody who doesn't know them take them out of my car and into a place that I'm not allowed to enter. That is not okay with me. I can't imagine doing that to my poor child. So I don't feel safe anymore in my community. I don't feel like I'm being heard. I don't trust the health department. I don't feel like they have the best interest in. And I wanted you guys to hear that. I'm coming to you because I feel like you can do something about it. So I'm asking, please. This is devastating for our community. The fact that we can't even have our normal farmers market is devastating. I'm a local business owner, and now I can't come to the farmers market. And we're forced to wear these masks, even though it's not required anymore. It's more of a, you should do this. And we're taking that personal choice out. We're taking away people's rights. We're also forcing health care. So the library is not even going to offer all of the benefits of the library, which they're publicly funded, which our house taxes pay for. They are now not going to offer all their full programs until there's a vaccine. That's not okay. No one should force me, my family, or anybody else to have to take health care that is not acceptable or wanted. There's so many problems with that. I get if people want to, that's fine. That's their right. But it's not okay to force me or my family or somebody else that doesn't want to. And so I'm just asking for your help, please.
Thank you. Why don't you stay there just a second? We may have a couple questions. And again, thank you for taking the time to come up and express your opinion. Your opinion happens to coincide with a lot of my thoughts as well, that was, if we look at what's taking place, a lot of our constitutional provided rights have been infringed upon, and that's going to be a personal decision that we're all going to make in the future as far as how far. But keep in mind, a lot of the directives have been sent down by the state. Now, again, whether they're right or wrong, we are obligated as a county and the health department to abide by those regulations. You mentioned the library specifically. Is there some issues with the screening process, or can you explain what issues you had with the library?
Yes, so they were taking temperatures, which wasn't required anymore by the state based on the guidelines that we were in, and we're now in green, right?
Well, so I wanted to be clear on that. We're not, at least unless it changed last night, we're still in yellow. There are some counties in the state that are green, but Weber County does not happen to be one of those.
Okay, so
we're still in yellow.
That's a misunderstanding then, because when I was looking at the governor's website and when he released, I think it was June 5th at midnight, the state went to green, and I didn't see Weber County excluded on there.
You have to go, there's a tab up top that shows that county by county, and there have been some counties, that's been a misunderstanding.
Right.
You have to click on the correct county.
Okay.
So it's just right up there at the top in the middle, and it's a drop-down menu, and you click your county, you'll be able to be better informed.
Yeah,
Okay,
we're
so
still in yellow, so I just
that wasn't clear to me. It
wanted
wasn't
to make
clear.
that correction. We've been hoping over the last 2 or 3 weeks we'd go to green, but we're not there yet,
Okay.
ma'am.
That helps a lot. I appreciate you telling me that.
Yeah, we'd love to see that happen, but right now we're not. And you're right, a lot of those regulations would come off when we go green.
Yeah. So the fact that it's a public place, the library is publicly funded, right?
Yes, correct.
Unless I'm incorrect. I can come in here and nobody's asking me personal medical questions. I'm recommended to wear a mask, but I don't have to. It's not forced. They're also forcing you to use their hand sanitizer. It should be available, but not, you must do this in order to enter. That's discrimination. Basically, I'm paying for the library to exist, but I can't go in there without having my Fourth Amendment right violated.
Well, and I think if you look at the protocol we went through, and Commissioner Harvey, that's in his portfolio, may want to weigh in on this, but we were anxious. In fact, we opened those libraries under Commissioner Harvey's direction earlier than I think the health department encouraged us to do so. But with the agreement that we open the libraries came with that the way to protect the public in general, because we wanted the public to have access. Obviously, the mask, were temperature checking, all those protocols were set by the health department, not necessarily to protect you, but protect those members of our society, members of our community go in there, especially those that are most vulnerable. They're older people that use our libraries. So again, I understand what you're saying. I don't disagree with what you're saying, but that was one of the provisions that we agreed to with the health department to open our libraries back up. Commissioner Harvey, would you care to weigh in on this?
You did a great job there, Commissioner. Thank you. So which public library do you use most?
Specifically the North Ogden one.
Great. The North Branch, not North Branch. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Then you understand that we have libraries dotted across the county.
I do.
Yeah. And so would it be fair to treat certain individuals differently because of where they live in the county than somewhere else?
No, and that's what I'm asking right now, is not to be treated unfairly.
I get that. Because of the locations in some of our libraries, we have higher risk individuals that commonly enter. North Branch doesn't get that hardly at all, if ever. And so there are higher risk individuals that enter our library, and according to the rules that the library board has established with the library staff, we treat all members who come into all branches the same. And right now it's equitable. We feel really good that we're protecting the public when they went in. You know, a lot of people think that when everything was shut down on the 16th of March, that everything was just plainly shut down. What the library staff did instead was sanitize everything that was in the library, including every book that was there, every piece of media. Everything is sanitized. So when the public goes in there now, we know it's a safe place. When a book is checked out, it goes out into an environment that we don't control. That's up to the individual. But when it comes back in, there are measures taken and time periods given to that article, 48 hours, I believe, and so before it's checked back out again, to make certain that whatever member of the public, whatever way they choose, is tough. So that's the reason we've done what we've done, and we'll continue to operate with those CDC guidelines until we get to a different level. Now let me go to the second part.
Okay.
Because you're a business owner, and we respect that.
Yeah.
There's some things under the direction of this commission and under Commissioner Frohr's direction that are coming your way as a business that's been impacted by this COVID-19. We hope that you'll stay and take a look at that, because it sounds to me like you've been impacted.
Yeah.
We know that the farmers market is open, but only to the things that are essential, which are food growers, like a grocery store. You must operate a business that's not of growing food. It must be something different.
That's correct.
Okay, so we'd encourage you to stay abreast of that, stay aware of that, because there's some help that's going to be coming your way as well through the CARES Act. You want to go back to that, Commissioner?
No, go ahead and you finish up. And
no, so
Yep,
just stay informed on that, and that's where it is. I appreciate you, though. I appreciate your coming and your caring, and we care about you and your kids. Not a lot we can do with the schools at this thing. We can pass on your sentiments, and I know that I haven't spoken with Rich Nye, the superintendent of Ogden School, but out in North Ogden I have spoken with Jeff Stevens, and they've done remarkable things to make sure that kids are treated safely, but all kids entering all schools within the Weber County district are treated equitably. So,
And I get that, but the problem is I can't enter the school with my child. That is terrifying.
you know, and you may want to address that with the Weber School Board. Attend one of their meetings. I think they're the second Tuesdays of the month.
Okay.
Thank you.
Again, thank you for being here. And Commissioner Harvey mentioned the CARES Act funding that the county will be putting together. That program will be available for application the first week in July. And I'd encourage you, if you do have a business that's been impacted, and I was going to talk about this later, but we're particularly looking at businesses within the county that were either forced to shut down by actions that you mentioned or voluntarily because they didn't have the business. 1,791 businesses in the county will be our target market for this first round of funding. The county is very fortunate to have some funding available from the feds. It's important. This commission has decided to help these, especially small businesses like yourself. So take advantage of those programs. Make sure if you have any questions, get a hold of ourselves, the commission, or somebody at the commission office, and we can provide you with the information, the application to at least make sure that you can continue to do what you do in your business.
Thank you. I appreciate your time today. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you for being. Commissioner Jenkins, you have anything to add?
Nope, I don't. You guys covered it well. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Thank you, members of the public that taken the time to be with us, express their concerns, and we do appreciate that. That's how we can better do our job, make decisions that we feel are best for the public, is when we have input from members of the public and they express their opinions. Thank you very much for being here. With that, Commissioners, let's move on to the consent items, if we might. Consent item 1 would be request for approval of warrants 2823 through 2853 and 450-252 through 450-388 in the amount of $2,390,277.39. Number 2, request for approval of purchase orders in the amount of $101,060. 3, request from the Weber County Attorney's Office for approval to surplus cubicles. 4, request for approval of reduction in the storm drains impact fees for the Challengers Pallets project. Next, 5, request for approval of the grant agreement by and between Weber County and the Department of Workforce Services to allow Weber County to continue to provide services under the county level plan to address intergenerational poverty in their community. 6, request for approval of change order 8 on Staker Parsons 12th Street project contract to cover cost of material that wasn't used on the project. Number 7, request for approval of change order number 9 on Staker Parsons 12th Street project contract to address accounting error regarding fix to Oxbow Crossing. And finally, 8, request for approval of a $22,000 donation of Prop 1 funds to the Trails Foundation of Northern Utah for the maintenance of the Pineview Loop Trail. Those are our 8 consent items. Commissioners, questions or comments before we go to Ricky?
I've got just a couple.
Go ahead.
I'm grateful that the work that's been done within our department about bringing another new business to Weber County. That's a sizable piece of property and a sizable business. Footage. Yeah, that's under roof there was going to be substantial, and so we've chatted about this before, and this is I'm glad to see that on the agenda. And then also on number 8, to continue preserving that active transportation around what I think is one of our great jewels in Weber County. The Pineview Loop is a great way to use those funds, and so I'm very much in support of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner, for those comments. Commissioner Jenkins, comments or?
Yeah, I misunderstood Commissioner Harvey's comments. What are you talking about, business?
Challenger Pallets coming
Pallets.
in.
Yeah.
Oh,
Pallet company.
okay, sure. I'm very aware of that.
Yeah.
I thought there was something else when you said that.
No,
I
sorry.
apologize.
I should have messaged maybe a little differently.
Okay. No, and I agree with you. I'm excited to get Challenger here, and it's great. I wish them well.
It makes great sense because they are located, pallets are used by so many transportation within the transportation industry, and to have them so close located to a freeway interchange and everything, it just makes great sense. This is a good overall general plan for that, so it's great.
I imagine one of their largest customers right across the street from them.
Probably.
Anything else, Commissioner?
No.
So, yeah, and I would agree with that. It's not every day that we give reductions, but I think that's one position this commission has taken, that we want to look at these individual businesses and the impact they have on our community, such as storm drains, and really the benefit that they bring to the community. It's basically cost revenue. And as we look at our cost revenue chart on this business, the benefit far outweighs the cost. If you look at property tax that would be generated, the jobs that this company would bring, it far exceeds this cost. So anytime we can encourage businesses without impacting disproportionately other businesses, I think that's a wise decision, Commissioners. And I appreciate your work on as we reviewed this over the past couple months as well. With that, Ricky, let's go to you.
Morning, Commissioners. We issued 14 purchase orders this week for $101,000. Half that amount, or $49,000, is for the Health Department to purchase vaccines as well as laptops. 27%, or $27,000, is for the paramedics, and that is to purchase extraction equipment. Then 11%, or $11,000, is for the IT department to purchase switches, routers, and software. As far as checks, we issued 166 checks this week for $2.4 million. Half of that amount, or $1.2 million, is for the 1% transportation funds that went towards the West 12th Street project. Then 9%, or $211,000, is 5 different ramp awards that were given to entities, and then we had 2 items at about $200,000. The monthly contribution to Weber Human Services and the contracted services for our paramedics.
Thank you, Mr. Hatch. Any questions for Mr. Hatch on the numbers? Commissioner Jenkins.
So, as I went through the numbers, it's not often we have a $2.5 million check run. That's a pretty hefty run. It stood out that over $1 million was for Staker Parsons. I'm assuming, it doesn't go into the detail there, but I'm assuming that all has to do with the West 12th Street projects, just special projects and highway supplies, but this is the West 12th Street,
Yeah,
probably, isn't it?
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay, the other thing I wanted to bring up here, Commissioner, is and maybe we could ask Stan to tell us this. This approval of this agreement on Challenger doesn't talk about the discount we gave them. And we don't have any way to access it here. It's not listed. And I just want to make sure that in reality when it's come through, it's equivalent to what we agreed on.
That's a good point. Stan, can you?
Good morning, Commissioners. I can.
I
Okay,
was looking for details as hell. Go ahead, Stan. Thank you.
so the owner of Challenger came forward to the commission on June 5th requesting a reduction in the impact fees. And when the commission met in a workshop meeting on that date, they were proposing at least a 50% reduction. After some talk and discussion, it ended up to where the commission proposed settlement at a 30% reduction. They thought it was fair. We were from 25% to 50%, and I believe when it hit the ground, it was at that 30%. What that equates to, basically, the original storm drain, and this is only affecting storm drains. It has roadways stay where they're at. All of the building fees, fire impact fees, they stay right where they're at. This is only about stormwater. Based off of nearly 7.831 acres that are affected. That's the building and the hardscape area for the project. It's calculated off of that through a formula that has been put together in his ordinance for the engineering department. We came out with storm drain originally of $110,043, which 30% of that reduction is $33,012.90. So the reduction amount is $33,012.90.
All right, that, my recollection is that's more in keeping with the other reductions we've gave in the past. And I was more comfortable with that, so thank you. That,
Yeah, we
Stan, I
did agree to
appreciate
that, 30%.
Right.
Yeah, so this,
Couldn't remember the exact amount.
the total impact fees on the project are less without impact fees for fire district included were $157,523. They're now going to be paying $124,510.10.
So the impact fees will still be over $100,000.
$124,000, yeah.
And then, Stan, could you remind us, since you're here, the size and maybe the cost estimate for that building?
The cost estimate on the building was just below $5 million, and the overall project area is just below 8 square acres. The building itself is where do I have it here? It's 59,350 square feet, which puts it about 1.25 acres. It's a really good-sized footprint.
Under roof.
Under roof.
Yeah.
Along with, again, all the hardscape for the trucks and parking that's going to occur.
That's great. And when do they anticipate that they'll have this complete
I
project?
think they're looking for occupancy in the next weeks, not months.
Yeah.
They've come a long, long way. I was out there last week, I think on Thursday or Friday. Parking has been, lots are coming along well, so they'll be requesting occupancy soon. We told them that what we were going to be doing is we would at least give them a TCO until this was resolved. The owner agreed to your proposal of the 30%, and they asked that we look for final approval and move it forward.
Great. Anything else for Stan before we let him go? Commissioners?
Nothing.
Thanks, Stan. That's great information to have. I think that explains the situation with a $5 million plus $33,000 investment for this company is, in my opinion, is a fair for the county to look at for what the future benefits would be.
Yeah, I agree. I think the revenues will be pretty good.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Additional comments, questions on our consent items, Commissioners? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
I'd make a motion, Mr. Chair, that we approve all the consent items as presented to us today, F1 through 8.
Thank you. We have a motion.
Second.
And we have a second. I'm going to call the motion. All those in favor say aye.
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 Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Let's go to action items. Action item G1, request for approval of the Heritage Land Development appeal to the Western Weber Planning Commission, denial of preliminary approval for Taylor Landing, 156 lot cluster subdivision located at approximately 4,000 west, 2,200 south in Weber County. Mr. Perks, you're up.
Good morning, Commissioners. Again, this is the appeal request that came before you last week and was tabled for additional discussion and review. It's an appeal request to the Western Weber Planning Commission's decision to deny the project for preliminary approval. And again, staff is here to answer any questions with regards to the record. The applicant is in attendance via Zoom and are available for questions as well. Happy to answer any questions for you.
Questions for Mr. Perks? So as I understand it, we're looking to approve the motion. The motion would be to approve the denial, the appeal of the developer.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Which is basically to keep the configuration as presented to the staff the same.
That is the appeal request, correct.
And as I understand it, at a planning commission, it was not unanimous, or what was the vote that came out of planning commission?
So the vote was 4 commissioners voting in favor of the motion, which was to deny, and then 2 commissioners voting in opposition to that motion.
4-2. Okay. And I think all of the our commissioners here before you have all read the minutes of that meeting, have reviewed that packet thoroughly. So, questions, commissioners?
I don't recall the wellhead in there that these ladies brought up. Could you show that to us?
So the wellhead protection zones are confidential information. There are locations in the county where the wellheads are located, but we don't like to make that public for safety concerns. Staff did review that, and no part of the subdivision boundaries within that wellhead protection area.
So no part of the subdivision boundary is within a wellhead protection area?
That's correct.
Okay, that's very important.
And just so we're clear, the wellhead protection zone set by the state.
Yeah, I'm not sure who makes that that determination, but there are specific locations that are protected.
Right. Okay. Yeah, my understanding that's set by the State Division of Water Quality, or the state water engineer, one of the two. Okay. Additional questions or comments?
So, you know, just for the future, I don't care if they are protected. I want that presented to us when we have a presentation. I'm a little uptight that this is the first time I've heard that there's one even in the area. And in the future, Rick, I want to see that. Okay? All right, thank you.
Appreciate that.
I got a question about that. I too am interested in that, but are these protected by the state, or can we do something by way of ordinance? Because I do like being out in front. I like being transparent, and so that kind of. But I respect the fact that we're protecting. By protecting the source, we protect those who may drink. So I kind of get that, but help me with that.
Yeah, we've been asked because of national security and impacts that it could have to public drinking water, that this is not made public information. That's why we look at this information, and then if it is within those areas, we let you know that it is or it is not. In this situation, it was not part of that, so it wasn't brought up, but we can make you aware of that, but we should make you aware of that in a closed meeting so that it's not public knowledge, because we don't want to endanger any well protection areas, especially when we're dealing with public safety and drinking water.
I'd like, if I may.
Go ahead.
Chair. Then, before this comes to this body, should another example like this come to this body, could you make a checklist for us to make sure that this is included, wellheads are included in that packet, so that we're not surprised, or we can answer with a little more confidence, one way or the other? I don't want.
We can definitely.
I think it would be a good practice process if we became aware, at least another level of security for the public. And so
we can let you know that it's outside of that area.
Great.
And we always check that. That's something that any subdivision that does come before you, that's something that staff looks at very seriously, because it is a life safety issue.
Well, I'm going to be a little bold here then, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
You ready for a motion?
I am ready, unless there's additional questions for staff. We actually discussed, just so public information, we actually went through this in pretty good detail last week, and then postponed the decision till today. So we as the commissioners had opportunity to review the packet and actually go out and view the site, in some cases in person. So I'm ready, Commissioner.
Well, over that, so if I may do so with a couple of comments.
Yep. Please.
So, you know, well, it's been a couple of years ago. This body moved towards doing a new master plan. We know that some of the master plans in Weber County, we know the most current plan out west was created back in 2003. Things were different in 2003, but it was only the master plan out west that was done in 2003. There are several pockets outside of out west that the master plan that they're operating on was the last master plan was created in 1970, right after Neil Armstrong put his foot on the moon, 50 years ago. It's highly outdated. 2 years ago, we worked on doing a new master plan and that we had funded in our budget. And then because of some decisions made by residents, which I support their right to be able to do what they want to do, we were stopped dead on because they petitioned to be a new city out there, which they have the right to do, and good luck to them. My point is we need to do something with the master plan. It's grossly outdated. The growth of our area is nearly 3 times what it was back in 1970. And we need to be a little more responsible, and I think we need to move towards that. Opportunity will present itself by virtue of the vote this November, but I'm speaking to something I know that we've all talked about, but I wanted to make that a matter of public record so people know. I'm a little sympathetic today towards development rights, having been out to that piece of property and looking. I'm not a pro farmer, but I've done my fair share in the last little while, and I know what salt grass is. I think that's a great area to put homes. I'm for the idea of moving towards development rights because I like development rights. I think that the argument that Ms. Bitten presented during public comments with regards to lengths of blocks speaks back to our plan, and while I don't always agree with the Planning Commission, I'm going to make the motion today that we uphold the denial that the Planning Commission sent forward today. Mr. Chair, so that's my motion.
Okay, we have a motion to uphold the Planning Commission denial. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. Do we have a second to that? Seeing no second, I'm open for another motion.
Chair Farrar, can I just make a recommendation that whatever motion the commission makes today, please make findings to support that motion, one way or the other, whatever it may be, because that will be what a reviewing body will look at if there happens to be an appeal either way.
Got it. No, I think we understand that, Court. Thank you, though, for that information.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, if I may now, counsel?
Yep, go ahead.
Was my explanation good enough, or do you need me to go further?
Do you want me to answer the...
Yeah, please.
Okay, you provided some explanation. That, to me, may not have been clear enough that the factual findings were there, but maybe if you had just stated it in a way, I make this motion based on these findings, it would be clearer.
Based on the findings of the block lengths, and also, Blake, based on the findings that we are going to the letter of the law instead of the spirit of the law. That would be mute on Zoom right there. That'd be it, Mr. Farrar.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. So motion dies for lack of a second. Floor is open, chair's open for another substitute motion.
I would make a motion today that we approve the subdivision as presented. Well, I think that's just it.
So your motion would be to approve the subdivision, which is basically approve the appeal.
Right, approve the appeal.
So your motion would be to approve the appeal, which would allow the recommendation from staff to go forward.
Okay.
And would you like to make your comment on that?
I would. First of all, this is
Wait, let's hold on. We better. That's your motion?
That's my motion.
Is there a second? I'm going to second that motion.
All right. The reason I would do this is, first of all, our staff has been through this, and this was the recommendation of the staff all along that this be approved. Secondly, I went out and walked this area the other night. I drove around the whole thing. I drove on it. I got out and walked it. I moved into the different areas and looked at it. And I understand this soil analysis was taken on this. This is all terrible ground. You can see stubble that's been on there from previous crops, and you can see salt grass and just all kinds of stuff. Most of the ground hasn't been under cultivation for years. Although you can see rows in parts of it where they have cultivated it. And I called the farmer who's going to farm this if we allow this change to take place so he can farm it, and asked him what his intention was. And he talked about being able to make it into a nice big piece that's easy to cultivate and would be profitable for him, and irrigatable, so he could irrigate it. And I bought into that. I thought it was reasonable what he's requesting to do. And as I look into the soil analysis, it's all terrible soil. It's some, at least I think it is. Now, my farmer friend or associate that I talked to, he kind of rebutted me a little bit. He said, look, if you can work this stuff, you can turn it into pretty good soil. And he said, I believe I can get a really good crop out of it if you allow us to do this. And so, you know, that's the way you work soil. You change the way it exists and what's on it. And these ladies actually talked of that a little bit with the nutrients that you put on and the way you change it. Now, knowing that there isn't a wellhead on it and that it's a little ways away, I feel comfortable in making this motion. And that's, Cortland, is that sufficient, my explanation?
Sure, yeah, just as long as you have something on the record to support your decision.
Does that conclude your motion and comments?
That concludes my motion.
So, Cortland, I want to, as a second, I think I want to weigh in on this for the record. So my analysis really, obviously, I'm familiar with that property. I lived out close to that property for close to 20 years, so I understand the ground configuration. I understand the community out there, at least I have in the past. But more importantly, I look at our ordinance and what we state in ordinance in terms of cluster subdivisions. The ordinance is very clear that in that zone that would require 30% of that area be in open space. If you look at the configuration as submitted by the applicant, he's up to about 57 or 58%, as I recall, Mr. Perks, is that correct? That's correct. So darn near double what is required. So somebody could come in and put in a number of additional residents on that property closer to the 30%. So the other factor that I would say needs to be considered is what Commissioner Jenkins has brought up as far as prime farm ground. If I look at that ground, I look at the analysis, what's important, whether that's prime or not, and I don't consider it prime as I look at farm ground. I think there's far more prime farm ground out west in Weber County that as I look at the future, what concerns me is if you consider this prime farm ground and you preserve that, what does that mean for the future of our farmers right now that are in agricultural, that when we see the population, as Commissioner Harvey mentioned, go from 100,000 in this county in 1970 to where we are now, over 300,000, where does that put us for the future as this community and the state double or triple in size? We have to make arrangements for our selves, where we have to make arrangements for our kids, our grandkids, the people as we're out selling this county to individuals to come in from out of state. Where do we put them? Where do they live? That's an important part for economic development, so our kids and grandkids have jobs. So with that, I would say it's important to recognize that the developer has, in my opinion, met at least the nature and intent of the ordinance in terms of size, in terms of future growth. I think there's still some decisions to be made in the future as Commissioner Harvey said, as we look potentially at a master plan as a general plan for the future. So, Commissioner Harvey, you want to weigh in on this?
I'm good. I've said my piece.
Really? Okay. Commissioner Jenkins, final remarks?
Nope, none.
All right. I'm going to call the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 2-1. Thank you. Let's move now to action item 2. Request for approval of utility easement granted by Weber County to Centurylink for the relocation of communications line in Weber County East parking lot. Mr. Mendoza, thank you.
Mr. Chair, can I interrupt you for a second?
Yes, go ahead.
So, did it take, I want to question the vote we just took. Ladies, don't leave just yet. Did it take a unanimous vote to override the Planning Commission in this case?
I'm going to make a ruling on that. My understanding is this, is that the only time it requires unanimous approval by this body is when it's unanimous with the Planning Commission.
That is
and
correct.
Since that, and just recently, that ordinance has been changed that only requires a majority, 2 members of this body, to confirm or override the decision, even if it's unanimous by the Planning Commission.
Right.
Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that everybody was aware of that. Thank you.
So with the 2-1, we even under the old ordinance, but that's now been changed.
Yeah.
So, that's correct. Right. That's the way you understand it, Commissioner Harvey? Thank you for that question. We want to make it clear. Back to you, Mr. Mendoza.
Thank you very much. We've got some very exciting items for you here coming up.
Well, we like exciting.
I'm kidding. These are easements, and there's not much detail with these. This first easement, like you said, Commissioner Frower, this is between, Weber County and ultimately Weber County, the management committee that is part of the condo association that's here at the Weber Center, and Centurylink. So what we're asking you to consider today is granting Centurylink an easement over property that Weber County owns that's really on the northern edge of the the east parking lot here at the Weber Center. Currently, Centurylink has a utility line that runs right along the east side of the parking structure, and as you know, the plan is to demolish that structure here very soon. What we're working with Centurylink on is relocating their easement or their utility line so it runs east up the sidewalk along 24th Street, north along the east side of the county's property there, and then diagonal over to some other utility poles. So in your packet you have the easement, you have a legal description, but as a part of that packet you also have an illustration. So you can see that diagram or that illustration of the easement we're asking you to
Everybody
consider.
should be able to pull that up. So, just to be clear, this is taking place because of our contract now to demolish the existing parking structure to the east side of the Weber Center.
That is correct.
Is that correct?
To ensure that utilities can continue to serve others and to make sure it's safe, we're relocating utilities that are near that parking structure.
Thank you very much. Anything else, Mr. Mendoza?
No, thank you.
Questions, commissioners? Comments? I think we all are aware of this. We know what we're doing with the parking structure. I'm ready for a motion unless there's questions.
Can I make a motion?
Please.
Hopefully I'll get a second on this one.
Yeah, you never know.
I'll make a motion that we approve the utility easement for CenturyLink.
Thank you for that motion. Do we have a second this time?
I will second that.
Wow, okay. We got a second.
I had to think about that for a minute.
I know, that's a
Trying to
tough,
pull that arrow out that was hit me just a second ago.
tough decision. Okay, you do have a second on your motion.
That-
Any further discussion?
I'd just like to get just almost a hallelujah there, but that's okay.
All right, must be a good motion. You had a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Let's go to item 3, acceptance of a temporary emergency egress easement granted by PC Thomas Investment Company, LC, to Weber County due to the Weber Center parking structure project. Again, this deals with our parking structure. Mr. Mendoza, you're still up.
It does, yes, thanks again. This particular easement is granted to the county from, like you said, Commissioner, PC Thomas Investment Company. This is in the event, this would be in place in the event that there was an emergency and county or any patrons or anybody visiting the Weaver Center would need to get out in an emergency. This would allow occupants of the building to leave to the east and then cross Thomas property heading north and be able to get to 23rd Street. This is interesting because it's an easement, and typically easements are just granted. Sometimes there are conditions or limitations associated with them. In this case, there are limitations, and so this serves somewhat as an agreement. So overall, what the county would be agreeing to, and what you're considering, is agreeing with the Thomases that this would only be used in emergencies. It would be limited to pedestrian traffic, not auto traffic, and access over to 23rd Street wouldn't go beyond December 1st of 2020. So that right would expire 1st of December.
Thank you. Questions, commissioners? Seeing none?
I'd make a motion to approve this, and I would, in my motion, like to thank Thomas Investments for their willingness to work with the county. They've been a really good neighbor, and they're nice people, and they've tried to work with us the best they could.
Yeah.
And it's notable, and I want to thank them for that.
Exactly. Thank you. Yeah. And do we have a second?
Second.
And we have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Let's go to action item 4, acceptance of a temporary construction activity easement granted by PC Thomas Investment to Weber County due to the Weber County parking structure. Is that the one we just did?
This is an additional, so the one
So
before
this
was
is addition. Yeah. So we've got two.
two from PC Thomas.
We got two easements. Okay. Can you explain the difference between the first and the second?
Yeah, the one that you just took action on, that was for temporary emergency egress for Weaver Center occupants to cross Thomas property to get to 23rd Street in the case of an emergency. This is a temporary construction activity easement, and it will basically allow the county's contractor, the hired contractor, to utilize 20 feet, the south 20 feet of Thomas property for construction activity, to locate some equipment, or in the case they need to go onto Thomas property to get a better angle or vantage to work on the structure, they'll be able to do that for a limited time. And again, this one, the county would agree to limit the use of the Thomas's property to construction activities only, and it would be also expiring December 1st of this year.
Okay. Questions or comments or a motion?
Commissioner, if I may, just one more thing I'd like to
Yeah,
point
go
out.
ahead.
Sorry. As part of this, the county's also agreeing to reserve and provide 4 parking spaces in the Weaver Center's north parking lot for the Thomas's tenants.
Great. Okay. I'm ready for a motion.
Motion to approve item number 4 as presented.
Thank you. And do we have a second?
I will second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Votes aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Let's go to agenda item 5, request for approval of a contract by and between Weber County and the Utah Cutting Horse Association for the UCHA Fall Cutting / UCHA Futurity and Aged event to be held at the Golden Spike Event Center. Mr. Duncan Olson.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
This contract is one of my favorites because it's one of our biggest events. This is a 10-day show. The Cutting Horse Association holds what used to be their state show. It's kind of ballooned into more of a regional show. It ends up bringing us nearly $60,000 in revenue and several hundred in economic impact. And with the tourism tax being the way it is, I'm excited to have this event and help us, fuel our own budgets. So pretty much what the breakdown is, we've given them a few discounts on buildings, and we've gone on the backside and we'll be able to recoup a lot of our labor, which last year we didn't do. And so this year we'll be able to, when they want their arenas changed and swapped, we'll be able to recoup that money.
Okay. Thank you for that. Questions, commissioners?
I've got
Or-
a little comment if I could.
Go ahead. This is your portfolio.
The one bronze in the conference room and in the commission conference room is a bronze of a cutting horse. I don't know if you've noticed that there by the cabinets, but it's a cutting horse, a horse cutting a cow. Weber County is no stranger to this sport. As far as annual payout, only horse racing pays up more money than does cutting horse events. Most of the people who participate in cutting horse events are owners, operators, CEOs, or presidents of their own corporations. And so they come in with usually some discretionary income, and they usually spend it in a tourism manner in our community. And the fact that this particular event is 10 days will bode well for the tourism of our community. It's something that I think is really good. I think it's actually fascinating to watch when you get into the detail, but it's for some it's like watching golf. They get it on TV and they think, oh, but some people enjoy watching it. I think that's why they put it on there. There may even be a channel associated with it, and there's a channel associated with this, by the way.
There is? Oh, good.
Just in case, you know. So anyway, I very much like this and appreciate what you all have done here. The fact that, you know, that we have the magic ingredients, the community is one, but we also have the consistent footing that's safe for those animals, and we have the availability of heifers or cows that are consistent to cut out of the herd makes this also really good. So there's another hidden jewel that most people don't understand, that we have a resource that we have that's right there at our fingertips, is the availability of a lot of cattle that are wild, so to speak, right off the ranch with Deseret and some of these others that come in. Thousands of head. They'll probably, for a 10-day show, my guess is they'll run through anywhere between 6,000 and 8,000 head of heifers.
Yeah, they bring them in on their way to the winter range, and so they bring them off Deseret. They have them at our facility for a day or two, if that, and then they ship them out to their winter range. It's kind of cool.
That's neat. And when is this?
This is in October. I think it's the second week in October.
Good.
There you go. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'll make the motion that we approve the contract between Weber County and this aged UCHA event.
Thank you. And we have a second?
Second.
Thank you for the second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Let's go to 6. Request for approval of a contract by and between Weber County and the Utah Youth Rodeo Association to hold the Utah Youth Rodeo at the Golden Spike Event Center. Mr. Olson.
So we actually had the contract with Utah Youth Rodeo approved several months ago, but because of all the coronavirus stuff and the regulations, they haven't been able to do the dates or have really any competitions. And so this is a new contract with them, proposing some more dates. It's the youth rates, and still working towards having their finals at the Golden Spike.
Okay. Questions, comments? If not, ready for a motion.
Motion to approve this contract between Weber County and the Utah Youth Rodeo Association. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
Duncan. Let's go to commissioner comments. Commissioners, last chance to weigh in for a while.
I will weigh in here a little.
Go ahead.
I'm pleased with what happened today. I'm disappointed the fact that we weren't unanimous in our vote. That happens occasionally, and we work very hard to try to get to unanimity as we go through these things, but that's the way it is. It doesn't happen, and once in a while we just don't agree. But we still like each other.
Right.
You know, with that, Mr. Chair.
Yes. Please.
I'm so grateful for your last sentence, especially of your comment. because it is true. Not only like, but I would further that by saying respect one another. We will leave this room today and we'll still be friends. There won't be any hard feelings, and there's just respect for differences of opinion. And that is so refreshing based on what I've personally experienced in the past. We're not all of us drive Fords or Chevys or Dodges or Jeeps. We all have a difference of opinion, and it's okay. Some of us, when we're done brushing our teeth, put the toothbrush in the drawer, and others put it in that special cup on top of the bathroom vanity. It's okay. The most important thing is that you brush your teeth. And I think we've all brushed our teeth today, so I'm feeling really good about that. Those are my comments today.
Thank you. And appreciate the brushing teeth comment. That's especially appropriate. And, you know, and I would agree that obviously it's great to be unanimous, but in my 12 years at the legislature, and I think Commissioner Jenkins would agree with this, that sometimes disagreement does not necessarily mean that you're disagreeable. It means that you have different viewpoints. And it's always, in my opinion, great to see both sides of that coin and to evaluate it before we make decisions. So not all of us look at it the same way. And if I ever learned one thing at the legislature, it's that you need to walk out of the room after the vote's taken, because that person that voted against you, you probably didn't depend on his or her vote tomorrow for another important item. So this is a process in motion, and that it doesn't necessarily hurt to see both sides, and when you see both sides, sometimes you have opposing views. That's what we saw today. I don't view that as unhealthy. In fact, I view that as a healthy dialogue that the public needs to see. So, thank you, Commissioner, for even though your motion didn't succeed, you made a great statement. With that, I would take a motion to go into a closed meeting.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chair, that we adjourn this public meeting to go into closed session to discuss personnel, property acquisition, or litigation.
Litigation. Thank you.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
I'll take a roll call.
Roll call.
Sorry.
Commissioner Harvey?
Aye.
Commissioner Jenkins? Chair Froer?
Aye, thank you. So we are going into closed session, closed meeting. We'll be back before we adjourn this public meeting.